My name's Andy. Back in 2014, I had quite a serious incident. Went to hospital. Had what was called necrotizing fasciitis after having a bout of Streptococcus septicemia. It's not an easy word to remember, which is basically a form of a sepsis. And whilst I was having, it started with strep throat and then went through an infection in my leg to cause Streptococcus septicemia, which is a form of sepsis which was trying to kill me. And then after a little while, they realised very quickly actually that it had changed into, I'm not sure how it changes or what the actual process was, but it had changed into necrotizing fasciitis, which is a flesh-eating disease which tries to eat away your fascia below your skin, in between your skin and your muscles and bone. You've got a fascia level over your whole body, which kind of keeps all your organs and everything else together and keeps your skin as a separate organ outside of your the rest of your body. And that was being eaten away. And there is nothing apparently that can treat necrotizing fasciitis other than cutting out every single cell of it out of your body. It doesn't respond to antibiotics or to any other chemicals or treatments. You have to cut every single cell out. And so in 2014, I went from being healthy and perfectly okay to having a very sore lump on my right shin, which within 24 hours I was in intensive care being looked after by two intensive care doctors, and then within 48 hours had the first operation of 6 operations, I think it was, to remove 5 or 6 to remove all of the necrotizing fasciitis from my shin. And about 2 weeks after I came out of hospital, I then had to go for a skin graft to cover up the entire area that had been removed. So quite a lot to happen within the space of, well, like I say, from the first lump being noticed on my leg within 24 hours in intensive care. I think I was in hospital in total for 16 days. I think it was 4 days in intensive care and then 12 days in normal ward. Well, separated off from the normal ward because it was a flesh-eating disease. They treat it the same as they treat MRSA or any of these other flesh-eating, highly contagious, they believe, issues. I don't think mine was contagious in the same way, but they still treated it in the same way. And any items that came into my room, like a pen or a pair of scissors or a needle or a syringe or whatever, they had to leave in my room. They didn't remove them at all. They were that worried about it. And then, so after the first 16 days, they went home for a week or two while my leg was still kind of, it wasn't healing as such. I had a contraption on that was sucking out all the juices to make sure it stayed fresh, ready for the skin graft. And then after, like I say, about a week or so at home, I then had to go for a skin graft to another hospital, and I was there for another 3 days, I think.
So when you were in hospital, a lot was going on. So what was the emotional side like? What were you thinking? What were you feeling? What was going on in your head?
It's a good question. I think a lot of it I'm kind of blank to be honest. A lot of the stuff that was going on with me, um, I say that and I'm probably going to get all emotional talking about it, so I don't really know if that's very true. Um, what was going through my head? I tend not to think about it now. It was a long time ago, and obviously when I do think about it, it does actually bring more emotions to the surface than I think I realise are still there. So what was going through my head? I was bored shitless. That was one thing I remember. Absolutely bored to tears. It was just incredibly boring sitting in a in a hospital room. My wife was there most of the time. She made it amazing. She made so many plans and did so many things, put herself out in so many ways to be there pretty much 12 hours a day, every day. So the daytimes were kind of okay, but hospital is just the worst place to try and get better. You don't get any sleep. It's uncomfortable. There are drips. I had so many drips and cables and wires and stuff coming out of me. It was crazy, especially in intensive care. I think I was kind of in and out of consciousness in intensive care anyway for 4 days, so I kind of got sleep there without even realizing it. I was on an artificial lung and intubated, so I had tubes down my throat. They were feeding antibiotics into me in almost every place you can imagine. So I had tubes coming into me and tubes coming out of me, and I basically laid there for 4 days. The one thing they didn't do was feed me artificially through a tube, so I lost 12 kilos in 4 days, which is crazy because I don't really weigh that much anyway. And 12 kilos off of a 68 kilo body is a hell of a lot to lose. But emotionally, I suppose, I suppose in the early days, you kind of go through a period of, why me? What have I done? Why do I deserve this? Well, obviously, nobody deserves to have a near-death experience, I suppose. But there was an element of that. But I think it very quickly moved on to, what the hell is happening, and how serious is this, and how much can they answer? And there's kind of a bit of an emotional roller coaster in the initial days, thinking just what's going on, just confusion really, and worrying about what's going to happen in the future. I think in the very early stages, I was in such pain because the sepsis had already started. So when I actually got to A&E, my wife helped rush me into A&E. We didn't bother calling for an ambulance or anything because we just didn't think there was time. So we raced through rush hour traffic across Milton Keynes to get me into A&E. And as soon as I got in, before I got in, my stomach was going through huge amounts of pain. And I was in waves every sort of 2 minutes or so. I was in absolute agony and almost unable to stand because of the pain in my stomach, because my major organs were already starting to shut down, sort of taking it in turns to shut down. It's kind of a strange thing, sepsis, what it does to you. And so I guess there was an element of panic because there was physical pain involved at the time, and really didn't know what to expect. So by the time I got into A&E and I was laying there, and they kind of gave me some painkillers to kind of calm that pain, and they started treating me for my blood pressure, because my blood pressure was incredibly weak. My heart rate was going from 50 to 200 and something, and then back again. It was going up and down all over the place. Then my kidneys would give up and I'd turn yellow for a while, and all these things were happening. And so I suppose most of the time then it's really mainly confusion and a bit of fear initially. And then I guess you're needing support. So I don't think I consciously can't remember, beyond being scared and fearful, I don't really remember feeling emotional other than that, because there wasn't really time, even though I was laying there doing nothing for ages. It was so confusing and it was so out of the blue, just literally came out of nowhere. Just didn't know what was going on, and neither did the doctors, neither did anyone else. That was the scariest thing about it. If they came in and said, oh yeah, it's this, this and this, and we know what's going on, it would have been fine. But there was no answers initially, so nobody knew. The first emotion I remember truly feeling was on the Saturday morning. So I felt just to give you a bit of context, I felt the lump on my leg 1 o'clock on the Thursday. I was in A&E 9 o'clock the next morning, and I was in intensive care by 1 o'clock on the Friday. So 24 hours I was in intensive care. By the Saturday morning, so not even another 24 hours later, we had about 20 doctors around me, all kind of interested in me as a case because it was a bit weird and a bit different. And some people were debating whether it might be necrotizing fasciitis, and there's only about 500 cases of those a year in the country, the whole country. And so a lot of doctors gathered around to kind of see what it was and see what was going on. So I had about 20 doctors sitting around, standing around, talking about what it could be and what the plan was. And then they were talking about taking me into my first operation. And the plan was, we'll take a biopsy. So basically that meant that, and I'm sorry if this grosses anyone else out, but you need to talk a bit about the details, I suppose. They were going to take a cut down the area that was swollen up, and basically the whole of my shin from above my knee, maybe even more than that actually, probably up to my groin actually, down to my ankle was swollen up. And they wanted to take a biopsy to see what it was and try and put it in a culture in a petri dish to kind of grow the bacteria to see what it was. And they said to me, the doctor said to me, we're not sure what we're going to find. So we are going to intubate you. So you're going to be on an artificial lung because you're being pumped full of so many antibiotics, and we're going in and out of operations potentially, that your body's going to forget how to breathe, which is kind of scary to hear. Nobody wants to hear that their lungs are going to forget how to breathe. So you're going to be on an artificial lung. We're going to take you in for a biopsy. We're going to put that in a culture dish, and we're going to see what happens. Now, he said the swelling had been so aggressive at that point that I remember it was up to my groin, And he said to me, if it goes into your groin properly, that's like kind of like Spaghetti Junction. I don't know if you know Spaghetti Junction, but it's a road network where roads go off everywhere from that area. And he said it's like Spaghetti Junction. If it gets into your groin, it travels everywhere in your body, and we don't want that. So if it goes into your groin, that's a real problem. At the moment, it was just kind of below my groin at the time. And so he said, we'll take you in. We might have to take some skin off in that first operation, or we might have to take all the skin off where you're swollen. Bear in mind, I was swelling from my ankle to my groin nearly, to just below my groin. So it basically would have been the removal of all of my skin over the whole of my right leg, which is obviously a bit scary. But I remember saying to him, because I was petrified at the concept of it going into my groin, I said, can't you just cut it off? Which is sorry. It's kind of, I don't know why I'm getting emotional. It didn't happen. It's kind of emotional to think about because, my choice at that point would have been cut my leg off, and I literally basically asked him to, and he said we're not there yet. He said it might come to that, but right now let's see where we're at. Anyway, so that was the situation. But I remember thinking very strongly that I didn't want the leg, because it was potentially going to kill me. So I went in for the first operation and came back. They'd just done the biopsy line. So they'd cut a long line along my shin, taken up various biopsies and put them in Petri dishes to see what it was. He said he had a very strong feeling that it was necrotizing fasciitis, which is this flesh-eating disease which can't be stopped. And so later on that afternoon, I was due to go back in for my first operation to have stuff removed, and they were going to remove as small amount as possible, probably about this sort of area off my shin, and then see what happened to the skin. If the skin started to go black around the edge of that soon after, then they would take me back in again. So after that initial experience of the first operation and coming back out of it, they'd taken the biopsies. As I say, they were looking to see if, the second operation where they started removing stuff, that's what I was on. So after the second operation where they started removing the first amount of flesh, which is about this much flesh, off my skin right down to the bone and muscle, they would then wait to see if any of the outside edges went black, a bit like frostbite, where the necrotizing element of the fasciitis meant that the skin would be necrotic, I think, or dead. Basically, it goes black and crusty, and that basically means that necrotizing fasciitis is still there and it's still advancing. Just to give you some stats, like I say, about 500 people a year get necrotizing fasciitis in Britain. If you are not in intensive care, you have no chance of survival. It is 100% death rate. If you're in intensive care, you have a 60% chance of survival, which is better than half, but still not what you want to hear. So yeah, the emotions, I mean, we didn't know all of this. Basically what we'd been told, and this was equally scary, is the doctor said to us, we think it's necrotizing fasciitis, and the first thing they said was, don't look it up. Do not look it up. They said, whatever you do, don't go on the internet and search about necrotizing fasciitis. It is hideous. And sure enough, if you do look it up, yeah, it's pretty disgusting because it eats away at people's faces and all sorts of stuff. It's horrible. Anyway, so emotions obviously quite high when asked to have my leg amputated instead in case it went, the situation went more deadly. And after each operation, there's a lot of chemicals in me. Obviously, you're coming out of operations and things. There's lots of stuff going on. But I suppose emotionally, I think it wasn't anywhere near as difficult as it was for my wife, for me, because I was laying there kind of just having to put up with whatever happened. I was helpless. I was literally laying in intensive care, couldn't move, had a lung breathing for me. I could communicate, I was conscious, which most people, everyone else that is in intensive care at the time, nobody else was conscious. Everyone else that was in there, they were all in comas or in such bad ways that they couldn't talk or anything. I couldn't talk, but I could communicate with the nurses. So you have a one-to-one dedicated nurse 24 hours a day So you can create a bit of a rapport with them, even if you can't write. Even if you can't speak, you can write and communicate. So I initially had a pad and I was writing questions down on the pad, and then later on I had an iPad and I was typing the questions out and communicating. So I still have notes in my bedside drawer that show some of the notes that I wrote down when I was in hospital, and some of the questions I asked. And obviously none of them have the answers on them, because obviously most of the answers were verbal coming back. And I haven't looked at them for a long time because I think it'd be too emotional. But I do remember one of the questions I asked the doctor, which was very emotional, was, am I going to die? I wrote down, am I going to die? And his answer, his verbal answer, was, you're very, very poorly. And I was like, next question was, yeah, but am I going to die? And so his answer was verbally, you're very, very poorly. And that's basically all he would say. So obviously doctors, they're trained not to say yes or no, but he was basically saying, yeah, you're pretty serious. This is not a walk in the park. This is pretty serious stuff. And on the notes that I still have in my drawer, the next thing I wrote was to my wife saying, this is where the insurance policies are. And just writing down a whole load of details about what she would need if I didn't make it. So I don't remember feeling this amount of emotions when I wrote that at the time, because at the time I think I was in this kind of fight or flight kind of survival mode where I was pretty pragmatic about it. I don't remember feeling this emotional ever while I was there, because I was thinking, well, I can't contemplate what death is. Death to me is just nothing. So you can't picture nothing. You can't think about what it will be like for me to be nothing. I'm not religious. I don't believe in any kind of spiritual stuff, or I didn't at the time. I'm not sure if I do now. A bit more open-minded to it than I was then. But back then, categorically atheist, didn't believe in anything. You died, you became worm food. That's what I believed. And so this concept of nothing didn't allow my brain to comprehend anything but surviving. And so I was adamant that survival was the only option. I would survive. That's, why else? But if I didn't, I better practically write down where stuff is in case Emma needs to find the insurance policies and the mortgage details and this, that and the other. So I basically wrote a bunch of stuff down. Obviously didn't really think about how the impact might be for Emma, because when I was asleep, I think later that day, all Emma saw was, am I going to die? Am I going to die? Emma, here are all the insurance details, and this is where you need to go looking for stuff. So I'm not sure quite how she took that at the time. But yeah, that's it's pretty emotional to read that back now, but more emotional now than it was probably when it actually happened the first time. I'm babbling on. Am I answering things the way you want?
Perfect. You're doing so good.
So to kind of summarize on your question about emotions, I think the emotions are more emotional, for want of a better word, now than they were when it happened, because I was in survival mode and I was just practically trying to think about how to survive. But there were moments when, even when I said, do you want to just cut my leg off? That was a real practical thing to say. If it's going to kill me, get rid of it. It made sense, right? I'd rather be alive with 3 limbs than dead with 4. So it made sense to me. And even when he came back and said, you're very poorly and stuff, I was like, well, okay, fine, but I'm going to survive because there's no other option. And then just various stages. I was just trying to be in practical mode. So I don't remember as much emotion then as I know I feel now.
What about now? So you say the emotion is stronger now, but how has the experience affected your life now in the present, and how you see things or view things or do things now that you've been through and survived a near-death experience?
How has this experience affected my life? Well, I smile because I don't want to get emotional about this. It's really silly. I smile because I actually really appreciate it. I'm actually really thankful that I went through this, which just sounds so stupid when I say it out loud. I actually wear the scar on my leg. I mean, I was lucky. It could have been so much worse. I mean, obviously I could be dead for a start, but the actual area that ended up being removed in the end was basically from my ankle to below my knee. It didn't even go over any joints. I mean, it was actually that they caught it so quickly, and the doctors were so amazing, and they worked at it so incredibly that I came out of it with this relatively small scar, like the whole length of the front sort of left side of my shin. And I wear it with pride because it just changed our lives in a positive way. Not immediately, but we learnt so many lessons from this experience and this near-death experience. We learnt so many things about ourselves and about what's important. At the time, I was working really hard on a small agency that me and a couple of business partners had set up. And we were earning a lot of money, but the pressures were high and there was various things going on. And life was okay. It was good. We were leading quite a materialistic life, I suppose, in that we had money, we had a nice house. We didn't really want for anything. Everything was fine. But a lot of the other stuff that we had going on in the area we lived in, we had quite a lot of superficial friends. We had a lot of people that we kind of thought we liked and thought liked us, but none of it was very deep or meaningful, I don't think. Anyway, we learned those kind of the typical kind of lessons where you have a near-death experience and you think, oh yeah, we've got to remember what's important. But nothing really changed initially. We kind of stayed doing the same thing for another number of years. And then a few years later, a couple of people that were quite close to us died really prematurely. My cousin's husband died at 49 from a genetic inherited heart disease, heart failure. And whilst we were at his funeral, a good friend of my wife's died from eating disorder related heart failure at the age of 37. So my cousin's husband was 49, she was 37. I was 43 when I had my incident. And that was the absolute kick up the butt that we needed. It was basically a massive reminder. It was a massive reminder to tell us that we hadn't done enough following the lesson that we'd been given. The opportunity to change that we'd been given, that driver, that seed that should have sown in us the reason for being more about contentment and joy and less materialistic and more about giving back to the world and living the life you want to live now. And it was at that point when these two people died, we realised that life is too short for us to continue to be doing things that we didn't really want to do. And we kind of took stock of our lives and realised that we were actually doing quite a lot of stuff that we didn't really want to be doing. We were kind of pulled from pillar to post doing different bits and pieces that were kind of okay, but I mean, we didn't have a bad life by any stretch of the imagination, but none of it was really what we wanted to be doing. And so it gave us this excuse, if you like, for us to challenge ourselves to do something different. And when Emma's friend died, we decided to take the whole family, all four of us, went up to Whitby just for a kind of a long weekend or a week away, just to go crabbing on the beach and stuff and just do family things and just do nice stuff, to kind of commemorate the deaths of the people that happened that year, and also just to kind of take stock, I suppose, of where we were at. And whilst we were there, Emma started Googling campsites for sale. I mean, what a random thing to do. It's kind of crazy, but she started Googling them, and we found a site, pretty much the only site we could afford, to be honest, that was within an hour and a half of where we lived, with lots of family being left back in the Milton Keynes kind of area. And so instead of driving straight home from the holiday, we decided to drive and have a look at this campsite. So all four of us, me, my wife, the two kids, all went and looked at this campsite and went home. I sort of, my wife was convinced straight away. She's like, yeah, we're doing it. I had to number crunch a few things and put some stuff into a spreadsheet and just kind of make myself feel happy that it was doable and we weren't just going to pour all our money down the drain and waste our time completely. Anyway, the numbers kind of worked out a bit and we had to take a real leap of faith because we didn't really know what we were doing. But it basically brought us to where we are now. We were running a campsite, living out in the open, greenery around us, trees, birds, dealing with people, having holidays, lovely time. Okay, it was kind of hard work at the beginning. We did a lot of improvements and stuff, but we were doing hands-on things to enjoy life more, to make something nice for other people to come and appreciate, to do things that were actually making us feel very content and very joyous that we were able to do these hands-on things and actually experience this life now rather than keep waiting and putting off and putting off and putting off. And not being in the corporate world. Being in the corporate world was hard. I didn't like dealing with corporates all the time. It was having to put on this constant persona and living in a world where everyone's kind of got to wear the ego on their sleeve and be this big person they're not and kind of be strong all the time and everything. And I think when I went through that, the people that I was working with at the time, when I went through what I went through, they were really supportive. And I basically had a few months off work. My business partner was really supportive. Well, both of them were, to be honest. And our major client, which was Scottish Power at the time, were amazingly supportive in everything they did and said to help me through it. So, and obviously all the friends and family and everything else we had around was all very supportive as well. It was all fantastic, very humbling process. But like I say, a few years later, the deaths reminded us that life's too short and we wanted to change. We didn't need to, we wanted to change. And so we did. And ever since then, Emma has since become a very, very good, accomplished yoga teacher. She helps people to open up their minds, become more flexible, become better people. And I have taken part in that yoga journey as well. And now I feel much more flexible of mind, body, spirit. And we are just living a much more balanced and content life, which I think I attribute this to my experience, and I think Emma does too, mainly. So I think we both appreciate that the changes that came about were initially from the leg, from the necrotizing fasciitis, and then given another lease of life and a big push from the deaths that we experienced. And so I'm really thankful for the whole thing that happened, because I don't think I would be here now. I'm a much healthier individual. I have a much healthier view on life. I am more flexible. I am stronger, I think. And this is, 11, 12 years on. And I was lucky enough to survive because I was pretty healthy and flexible and youngish back then as well. But yeah, it's been a godsend, ultimately, ironically.
That's so good. If you can give one message to anyone that has been through a traumatic experience or gone through a near-death experience or knows someone that has, or just anyone really, what would you want to tell them? What would you want to teach them and think everyone should try and learn to live a better life like you said you have?
Okay, so what's the one message I would give people?
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily go out there and try and have a near-death experience. That would be kind of crazy, even though I'm actually really thankful for mine. I think the lesson that I've learnt from this and from this whole process is that human beings, from what I've seen, don't seem to understand what they're capable of, or don't see their own potential until they've hit some sort of rock bottom or something really challenging. I think there is a kind of another lease of life, I think, that is given to people that have had really challenging circumstances. If you look at the attitude of people that have got disabilities and stuff, not all of them, but a lot of them have really positive attitudes about the future and about what they have to do to overcome their disability. People that lost limbs or born with problems or anything else, they're quite often very, very strong-willed. And people likewise that are in the arts quite often are given huge amounts of creativity from hitting rock bottom. So you'll find songwriters and artists and sculptors and all those kind of people very often will find a new lease of life and a new depth of artistic abilities from, I don't know, being homeless or kind of having no money, literally being on the breadline, or some other major trauma. It seems to be these things kind of lift people up to the next level. And I'm not suggesting that what we went through has lifted us up to this euphoric level or anything. I'm not saying that, but it has helped us to see that where we were going and what we were doing probably wasn't right for us, and it took this shock to come out of that and to do something else. So I guess the message would be, okay, let me start again in a way. I feel there are two ways of learning major life lessons. One is old age. You gradually grow older and you realise that life is too short not to dance as if people aren't watching, not to to worry about what people are thinking about too much. And as you get older, you start giving less of a damn and you start living more of your life. But obviously the timeline you've got gets shorter and shorter and shorter. And you either learn, I think, these big lessons through old age or through some sort of major incident like a life-threatening situation or hitting rock bottom. And I think that's why people that have been through these things kind of learn these lessons earlier and give themselves a better chance at having this more kind of joyous or contented life as they go forward. And one of the things I've noticed is that as we learn more about yoga and about the yoga principles and about yoga philosophy, all of it is teaching you about self-improvement and about self-observation and about how to kind of live, how to take those old age kind of life lessons or those near-death experience life lessons that are forced earlier. And yoga kind of teaches you these things and allows you to understand what's important in life. And it doesn't mean that anyone that does it is impervious to other influences or have always got it right. Humans are flawed. We're all flawed. But I do genuinely think that the stuff that we have learnt and the stuff that we've read about through Emma's teaching and through what we've collectively read together and through the podcasts we do to try and help other people sort of understand the stuff a bit better, my lesson is that people should do something like yoga or something to better themselves, to actually understand what the sort of bigger picture is, to kind of take stock of their lives and to work out what's important, what's really important. Because a lot of the baggage that we carry around, the possessions, the belongings, the house size, how shiny your car is and what brands you wear on your feet and your back and everything, they're all pointless. I mean, I've always felt that anyway, but a lot of people don't feel that. But a lot of people don't understand just how much emotional baggage they carry around as well. Huge amounts of emotional baggage people carry. And they're dragging this stuff, wading through life, creating this massive wake of crap behind them with all these material possessions and all this emotional possession or emotional baggage they're carrying with them. And life doesn't really need to be like that. And I think there's a lot of lessons to be learnt out there. So I would say, learn these lessons now. Don't wait until you're 70 and you suddenly sort of say to yourself, oh yeah, people have been saying for ages that, think about what's important in life and don't worry about what people think too much, and concentrate on trying to be content, not about beating people or earning as much as you can or buying as much stuff as you can. And people learn this late in life and then say, why didn't anyone tell me this 40 years ago, 30 years ago? Well, here I am telling you 20, 30, 40, 50 years before you might have learned it yourself. Do yoga or learn some philosophy about what's important in life and live life that way. Don't live life materialistically and by the way that the Western society, the Western, the typical Western lifestyle suggests otherwise. Suggests we should be buying much as we can, greed is good, fight and grow and grow and grow. And at the end of the day, in a finite world, everybody can't grow. Everybody can't improve and get better. If somebody is growing or earning more or getting more, then somebody next to them is getting less, earning less. Something's reducing. It's a finite world, finite resources. So when one company is growing or one person's growing in monetary terms, somebody else is losing out. Or the planet is. And so, contentment and stuff like that is more important. Bhutan is a country that has a minister of happiness, and that's just beautiful. I don't know any other country in the world that's got that, and Bhutan prioritize joy and happiness and contentment as as a national commodity over and above lots of other things. And I really want to go there because I think that's such a beautiful thing. The rest of Western society is just all about greed and growth and killing the people around you to survive and grow more and climb on them to get higher, and it's just not right. It's quite a long-winded answer, but I think that's kind of, in a not very small nutshell, what I would say. The other point I would like to get across in this, if you don't mind, is that I know you filmed Emma, my wife, as well. But I want to say that I I totally understand that what she went through was so much more than what I went through. And what my daughter went through at the age of 6 was so much more than I went through. I just had to lay there and try not to die. That's all. I mean, like I said before, that wasn't even a choice. It's like kind of, well, what else is there? But the amount that has gone on in my daughter's head and my wife's head during this whole process is way more than what's gone on in mine. I've been fairly logical about the whole thing, I think, to a large extent, but the impact it's had on the people around me, obviously it can be different to different people. My son is seemingly relatively unscathed from the whole process. He was 8 at the time, and boys and girls quite often take on emotions and situations in very different environments, and obviously everyone interprets things, emotions and things and circumstances very differently. But the fact that we found out like 3 months later that our 6-year-old daughter had blamed herself for what happened to me, that was so shocking. We had no idea. No idea that she blamed herself. But the thing at that age is, you don't know what's going on, and you look at your parents and you think they're invincible. They're going to live forever. So I think when our daughter saw at 6, even though we tried to hide so much from her, we tried not to show her any of the real pain, or certainly not the scarring or anything else. We covered the leg up and everything. When she finally came to see us at the hospital, when my son and daughter finally came, after about I think I'd been in there for about a week or so. Like I said, the leg was completely covered up. I was in bed, so they didn't see anything, and we tried to play down what it was and what happened and everything. But my daughter had her 6th birthday party ruined as a result, because I literally went into hospital the day before her party. I think it was actually on her birthday, or was it the day before her birthday? I can't remember, but it was very close to her birthday. Her birthday party was supposed to be on that Saturday, and I was basically in hospital having operations done to either try and make me survive, remove all the skin off my leg, or cut my leg off, or whatever, on the day that she was supposed to have her 6th birthday party. So that's traumatic. But the fact that she blamed herself for months afterwards, and we didn't realise, and we've been dealing with the aftermath of that in some way, shape or form ever since. There are still traumas that she has. There are still so many things that she carries, none of which she needs to, none of which are logical. they're all phobias, but they're all things that are born out of what happened to me. And I can't blame myself for it because what happened to me wasn't my fault. I didn't do it on purpose. So I don't blame myself. But at the same time, I'm so helpless. I can't take away the thing. I can't take away the thing that is in her head, the thing that what happened to me put in her head. It's nobody's fault, but she suffers as a result. My wife suffers as a result. And like I say, it's not my fault, but I can't help but feel a lot of responsibility for not having been able to remove those problems from my wife and my daughter, which is probably the most emotional thing about the whole thing. It's not what happened to me. I mean, I had a problem, I survived, big deal. But the knock-on effect is massive for my wife and daughter, and that is awful because here we are nearly 12 years later and it's still affecting us. I mean, it's not stopping our lives, it's not impacting us majorly, but obviously it's still there, and I wish it wasn't, because I don't want to limit my wife and daughter in any way, shape or form. So I wish I could help them more. Anyway, overall, it's been a really useful thing, but I wish my daughter hadn't had to pay such a high price.
Okay, that's a good way to end. I need to come give you a hug. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not your fault, like you said. You helped me more than you'll ever know.
I put the problem there in the first place.
No, you didn't. It wasn't you. I'm just so happy you're here. And I just was so scared that you wouldn't be.
Oh, darling, but I am. That's why you have to stop being scared of doctors and nurses and hospitals. They're amazing.
I know, that's a me thing, though. None of it is your fault, okay?
I am so proud of you.